And Charles, we're talking about CPS earlier in the program. What's going on at the K through 12 level? Trying to get a handle on some of these skirmishes over identitarian politics inculcated in policy at the K through 12 level. And to me, it feels a little bit like not exactly the beginnings of political correctness on college campuses, say in the late 80s. It feels like we're a little further down the road in terms of the complete disintegration of K through 12 education, like has largely happened at the collegiate level. I don't know. I mean, you like to report on happy occurrences like this West Point, Virginia school board that has agreed to pay $575,000 in damages and attorney's fees to a former high school teacher named Peter Flaming, who was fired for refusing to use a trans student's requested pronouns. And that's progress, I guess, 5 years after the suit was filed. And there's a suit that has been filed against Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. It's one of the top public schools in the United States. It has seen a major decline in academic achievement since implementing new admission standards in pursuit of racial equity in 2020. The implementation of the new admissions metrics reduced the Asian population within the student body from 73% to 54%. Correspondingly, the school's ranking fell from number 1 in the country to number 14. 4 years ago, it had 157 semifinalists for National Merit Scholarship. That has been halved in the intervening 4 years. And so there's a coalition of parents that are now suing the school and attempted to take the case to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court didn't take it up.
Where is this school?
New York.
Pardon?
New York.
New York.
Yeah. So you have the implementation, you have a parental reaction finally at some point, but even when you have Supreme Court intervene like it did in the Harvard admissions case, as Jason Riley was writing about in the Journal the other day, you still have these Ivy League schools and these otherwise quote unquote elite schools gaming the system to to achieve their race equity goals. For example, after the Harvard admissions decision, the percentage of the student body, the Asian percentage of the student body at places like Princeton and Duke actually declined, which, as John Yoo, who is a friend of the show and a law professor at Berkeley, said, that it's declined because they're cheating. They're, gaming the system. Maybe it's through personal diversity statements. Maybe it's just through sort of name profiling, surname profiling. I don't know exactly, but we know from previous examples that when you return the system to meritocracy, you get a distribution that is not consistent with the quote-unquote equity goals of the left. And, we saw this in California, for example, after they, at the state level, banned race-based admissions policies. And the percentage of Asians admitted to elite schools increased because we know from test scores and other measures that Asian students as a cohort outperform all other students in terms of racial categories.
Academically.
Academically, yeah, right. So, but I mean, my point is to say, like, you trying to get a sense of where things are going, and maybe it's not possible to get a sense of it. Maybe it's just going to be uneven, but just in terms of sort of where the overall momentum is, it still feels very much like it is on the side of the identitarians to me.
It is, but it's changing, and I think it's changing in the courts. I think the Supreme Court ruling regarding affirmative action certainly was was the product of Asian Americans basically wanting to restore the meritocracy because, of
Yeah.
course,
Well, they were. Yeah, I mean, they were getting discriminated against. It wasn't just
absolutely.
like we're trying to get more students of various races, and it was like they were artificially lowering their personality scores at Harvard as a way to prevent them from attending. I mean, it's really sickening the lengths how you would treat somebody like that when you're supposed to be this institution of higher learning.
But they're
Um,
winning.
but
I mean, they're winning in the courts.
that's my well, that's right. But you can win in the courts, and then the implementation is always painstaking. By the way, I misspoke. Thomas Jefferson, the Thomas Jefferson High School I'm talking about is a magnet school in Alexandria, Virginia,
Okay.
not New York.
That's right.
For more on this, please be joined by Amy Wax, who is the Robert Mundheim Professor of Law at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Professor Wax, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So what's I know you're in the Ivy League and at the collegiate level, obviously, but what's your sense of what you see bubbling up from K through 12? Do you see? I mean, I guess I would ask: Are you more optimistic than you were 5 or 6 years ago, or do you still see sort of it all slipping away? And as I remember speaking with you, you suggested that the Ivy League was unsalvageable, should be essentially shuttered and reconceived. And I wonder if K through 12 is approaching that position as well.
Well, I do see students after their 16 years of churning through the system of K through 12 and then college beyond that. And I have definitely noticed a deterioration in K through 12 preparation on multiple levels, mostly just a lot of propaganda and indoctrination about American history, Western civilization, its evils, its flaws, its downsides, how it's at fault for everything bad in the world. So there's that. There's also a lot of attention paid to sexuality and gender with progressive indoctrination looming large. And in my opinion, that shouldn't even be part of the curriculum. That's something relatively new. And then there are just humdrum defects like the failure to teach phonics, which has been shown to be a more effective method of teaching reading. So we have a lot of students who can barely read. And then a new math, which is student-directed, doesn't require students to memorize their times tables or their addition tables because that's just too tedious. So they're not prepared to do higher level math. So there's a partisan takeover of K through 12. It's spearheaded largely through the ed schools. The ed schools are a major problem, I think, and something needs to be done about them. And also just a general deterioration in standards in the name of equity. So I am very pessimistic about K through 12 education, and I think a lot more attention needs to be paid to K through 12 by Republicans, by conservatives, because that's where all the trouble starts.
Yeah, I mean well, I mean your sense of it is my sense of it. Then I just uh, you just see what's coming out of K through 12, even if you just look at the data, that as you were sort of referencing, the grade level proficiency in reading, the grade level proficiency in math, and in places like suburban Chicagoland, you have these schools that have these longstanding reputations as being, oh, these are great government schools, and then you actually look at the numbers and you maybe assess some of the curriculum, and you get a load of some of the students that are coming out. And you say, really? That's New Trier High School in 2024 America, for example? Very different than what it was 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Of course, and the reputations are really sticky. There's a lot of gaslighting and sneakiness going on here. But it's also something else, which is when you have these very wealthy suburbs, these, very segregated, let's be clear, almost all white and Asian suburbs, these students are going to do relatively well no matter what you do to them. Uh, so, uh, it's the students, not the school. But as you go into more middle class and lower middle class venues, it really does matter how students are taught and what they're taught. And there's enormous amount of damage that is being done, I think. And the problem, of course, is that schooling in this country is mainly local. It is controlled by local school boards. On some level, that's good. Conservatives like what is called devolution, that is local control. That's part of our system of federalism. But the problem is that if you want to reform education, you have to go locale by locale, and that is very difficult to do. You have to fight multiple battles. So I think that we need to look at the federal level for what kinds of tools and levers are available at the federal level to try and reform K through 12, very difficult. But also I sense a parental movement of rebellion. I don't know how big it is. It's hard to gauge that. But just from people I talk to, people I know, some of them just middle of the road politically, frankly, or even lean left, and they are not happy with what is going on in the government schools. They are seeking alternatives. They are tired of political correctness and the hollowing out of the curriculum and the poor ways in which literacy and math are being taught. So they are going to homeschooling. They are starting new classical academies. Some are looking at religious schools, Catholic schools, yeshivas, that sort of thing. Of course, some of those have been taken over by wokenists too.
Right.
So you have to be careful, and it's a lot of work for parents to find alternatives.
Well, and to that point, I mean, the effort by the education establishment, which basically is like a wing of the new Bolshevik Party, is to Harrison Bergeron successful kids, or kids that are going to be successful, and they're going to be successful regardless. To your point, the problem is that so they'll get out and they'll do fine, but the majority will not. And as you said, status is sticky, convenience, resources. These are all issues. And so I'm just going to default to the local school and believe that it still it deserves the reputation it enjoys, and keep my head down and get my kid there through 4 years of it, and then on and off to college, and then I've done my part, kind of thing. And so the combination of that, plus, as you mentioned, something very important, that the pipeline of personnel into these schools is coming from Marxist departments within Marxist universities as well. So, I mean, it's basically a closed network. And the attrition, the time for real attrition to occur in terms of people leaving the system altogether, when you're starting with 90% of kids in K through 12 government schools, I mean, that will take generations and generations to have a material impact, given their reliable source of funding, meaning extracting it from the productive people. And so it seems to me that like something really seismic has to happen. There needs to be some sort of exogenous event or an paradigm shift, because the trajectory we're on now is for an idiocracy, frankly, and the Republic won't survive an idiocracy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. For the affluent children, the upper middle class of students, they are getting the basics, and they are going beyond the basics just in general skills, math and literacy type of thing. Although with the internet, even they are seeing a decline in skills because they don't read, they don't really do what is necessary to become truly sophisticated. But where the damage is being done, even with the elites, is in the indoctrination machine, the anti-Western, equity, inclusion, and diversity propaganda that they're hammered with every minute of every day. And that is the reigning ideology. And they're not even aware, in most cases, that there is another point of view. When they come to me, this is our future leadership class, of course, so their importance is outsized. When they come to me in law school, even if they're curious about conservative ideas, values, thinking, they are almost completely unaware of the fundamentals, the basic tenets, because their mind has been hijacked by the ed school contingent. So that's still a huge problem. The people lower down on the totem pole, they have that problem, but also lack of basic skills. So that's compounded. But of course, they're less influential than, the people from elite precincts. However, they vote. So, it really does matter that they're not getting both sides of the story. They're not getting a balanced view. They're not understanding all of the strengths and, the successes of our civilization and of the values underlying that: personal responsibility, civil society, small government, equal opportunity in the sense of a single standard, the meritocracy, respect and love for our nation. I mean, all of these values are not emphasized, quite the opposite. In fact, often they're labeled white supremacy.
Right. I mean, it seems to me, rather than all these people that support their alma mater, support either Peter Thiel's foundation or Mike Rose, get people out and away from college into doing something productive. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think it's a singular one, but there's not. I agree with what you said before too. There's just not an appreciation, even from most in the Republican Party, for how critical the situation is with K through 12. Amy Wax is the Robert Mundheim Professor of Law at University of Pennsylvania Law School. Professor Wax, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
And she joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hi, I'm Paul Jenkins, owner of Bancroft Architects and Engineers, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business providing design solutions for clients, including the VA. When looking for a trusted banking partner, Bancroft was lucky to find that partner in Signature Bank in 2015. With Signature, personal service goes beyond a login and a PIN number. My staff and I have the comfort of knowing that we're dealing with real people who know our business and care about us as individuals. Signature helped finance our new state-of-the-art facility, and Bancroft looks